The morning sun had barely kissed the horizon when Logan Thorne stepped out of his ranch house in North Platte, Nebraska, and saw a stranger on his prized stallion racing across the eastern pasture like the devil himself was giving chase. He froze, coffee cup halfway to his lips, watching the figure lean low over Thunder's neck with practiced ease. His first instinct was anger at someone bold enough to steal from him, but something made him set down his cup carefully instead of reaching for his rifle. Maybe it was the way the rider moved with the horse rather than against it. Or maybe it was the fact that the thief seemed to be heading back toward the ranch rather than away from it. Either way, Logan stood his ground and waited, his jaw set and his blue eyes tracking every movement across the golden grassland. Thunder's hooves thundered closer, kicking up dirt and morning dew as the rider approached. It was only when they were 50 yards out that Logan realized two things simultaneously. First, the rider was a woman. Second, she had no intention of stopping. She pulled Thunder up short just 10 feet from where Logan stood, the stallion rearing slightly before settling. The woman sat astride the horse like she was born there, her dark hair wild and loose around her shoulders, her chest heaving from exertion. She wore men's trousers and a shirt that had seen better days, but it was her eyes that caught Logan and held him captive. They were a fierce green that seemed to burn with an inner fire, defiant and unafraid. "Your horse needed a proper run," she said, her voice slightly breathless but carrying an edge of challenge. He was practically begging for it. Logan found himself at a loss for words, which was unusual. He was a man who dealt with cattle rustlers and claim jumpers with quick decisions and quicker action, but this woman had thrown him completely off balance. "That's so," he finally managed, his voice rough. "And you figured you were the one to give it to him." "I figured he deserved better than standing in that corral all morning while you sipped your coffee and watched the sun rise." She swung down from Thunder with fluid grace, landing lightly on her feet. Up close, Logan could see the dirt smudged on her cheek and the determination in the set of her jaw. "I am Penelope Lawson. I arrived late last night and slept in your barn. I hope you do not mind." "I do mind, as a matter of fact." But even as Logan said it, he realized he did not sound as angry as he probably should have. Breaking into a man's property, stealing his horse, and then acting like you have done him a favor is not exactly the best way to introduce yourself, Miss Lawson. "I did not break in." "Your barn door was open." Penelope ran a hand down Thunder's neck, and the horse nickered softly, already half in love with her. "And I did not steal him. I borrowed him. There is a difference. Not much of one from where I am standing. Then perhaps you are standing in the wrong place." The fire in her eyes intensified, and Logan felt something shift in his chest, something he had not felt in a very long time. "I have been traveling for 3 weeks straight from St. Louis. My father sent me here because he thinks a woman has no place in business, and I needed to clear my head before I did something I would regret. Your horse gave me exactly what I needed." Logan studied her for a long moment. There was a story there, layers of hurt and anger and determination all wrapped up in this dusty, disheveled woman who had stolen his horse at dawn. "You could have asked," he said finally, his voice softer. "I could have, but I did not think you would say yes." Penelope met his gaze steadily, not backing down an inch. "Would you have?" He considered lying, then decided against it. "Probably not. There you go then." She handed him Thunder's reins, her fingers brushing against his for just a moment. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through Logan's system. "Thank you for the ride, Mr. Thorne. I will be out of your barn by noon." "Wait." Logan did not know why he said it, just that he could not let her walk away. "Not yet. Have you eaten?" Penelope paused, turning back to look at him with suspicion clear on her face. "Why?" Because you look half-starved, and because despite the fact that you are trespassing and horse thieving, I was raised to offer hospitality to travelers." Logan gestured toward the house. "My housekeeper makes biscuits that could make a grown man weep. Least I can do is feed you before I decide whether or not to have you arrested." A ghost of a smile played at the corners of her mouth, the first softening he had seen in her expression. "Are you going to have me arrested?" "Have not decided yet." But they both knew he would not. Penelope studied him for another moment, then nodded. "Biscuits sound good." Logan led Thunder back to the stable while Penelope walked beside him. The morning was warming up, promising another hot August day in 1882. The ranch was quiet except for the sounds of animals stirring and the distant mooing of cattle in the far pastures. Logan had built this place from nothing over the past 6 years, turning a patch of Nebraska grassland into one of the most successful cattle operations in the county. It was his pride and his purpose, the thing that got him up every morning and kept him going through the hard times. But as he glanced sideways at the woman walking next to him, dirty and defiant and more alive than anyone he had met in years, Logan felt something shift in his carefully ordered world. "So you came all the way from St. Louis because of your father?" he asked as they reached the stable. "That is part of it." Penelope's voice was guarded. "My father owns a textile business, a very successful one. I have been working with him since I was 16, learning every aspect of the trade. I can negotiate with suppliers, manage the books, and I have ideas that could double our profits in 5 years. But he refuses to even consider making me a partner because I am a woman. He says I should be focusing on finding a husband, not concerning myself with business matters." Logan unsaddled Thunder and began brushing him down. "I take it you disagreed." "I told him that I would rather die alone than marry some man who wanted me for my father's money and expected me to sit quietly at home producing heirs." The bitterness in her voice was sharp. "We had quite the argument. He gave me an ultimatum. Either I accept his decision and start seriously considering the suitors he has lined up, or I could take some time to travel and see if I changed my mind. He thought sending me west would make me realize how much I needed him and his protection." "And has it?" "No." Penelope leaned against the stable wall, watching Logan work. "It has made me realize how much bigger the world is than my father's narrow view of it. I have met women running boarding houses and working as telegraph operators. I met a woman in Kansas who was managing her deceased husband's ranch all by herself. If they can do that, why can I not run a textile business? No reason you cannot, far as I can see." Logan finished with Thunder and turned to face her fully. "Any man who cannot see your worth is a fool, including your father." The words seemed to catch Penelope off guard. She blinked, and for just a moment the defensive wall around her lowered enough for Logan to see the vulnerability underneath. "You do not even know me. I know you can handle a horse like you were born on one. I know you are brave enough or crazy enough to sleep in a stranger's barn and take his stallion for a ride without permission. And I know you have got fire in your eyes that matches my own." Logan said the last part without thinking, then felt heat rise in his face. "What I mean is, you have got determination. That counts for something." Penelope was staring at him now, really looking at him for the first time. Logan became suddenly aware of how he must appear, his dark hair probably standing on end from sleep, his jaw unshaved, his work shirt wrinkled. He was 30 years old and had been too busy building his ranch to worry much about his appearance, but now he found himself wishing he had taken a bit more care this morning. "Thank you," Penelope said quietly. "That is kind of you to say." They stood there for a moment, the air between them charged with something neither of them could quite name. Then Logan cleared his throat and gestured toward the house. Come on. Those biscuits are waiting and Margaret gets annoyed if I let her cooking get cold. Margaret Brennan had been keeping house for Logan for 3 years, ever since her husband died and left her with no income. She was a formidable woman in her 50s with iron gray hair and a no-nonsense attitude that Logan appreciated. When he walked into the kitchen with Penelope in tow, Margaret took one look at the younger woman and immediately went into action. "Sit," she ordered, pointing at the kitchen table. "You look like you have not had a decent meal in weeks." "It has not been that bad," Penelope protested weakly, but she sat down gratefully. Margaret piled a plate high with biscuits, gravy, eggs, and bacon, then set it in front of Penelope with a glass of milk. "Eat, all of it." Logan sat down across from Penelope and accepted his own plate from Margaret, who gave him a knowing look that he chose to ignore. He watched as Penelope dug into her food with barely restrained hunger and felt a pang of something protective move through him. How long had she been traveling with inadequate supplies? How many nights had she gone to bed hungry rather than ask for help? "So what were your plans after North Platte?" Logan asked after they had eaten in silence for a few minutes. "More traveling." Penelope swallowed and wiped her mouth with the napkin Margaret had provided. "I was thinking of trying to find work for a while, build up my funds before I head back east. My father gave me enough money for the journey, but I have been trying to make it last. I want to prove to him that I can take care of myself." "What kind of work are you looking for?" "Anything, really. I can keep books, I can sew, I can cook and clean. I am good with numbers and even better with negotiations." Penelope paused. "Why do you ask?" Logan had not been planning to say anything, but the words came out before he could stop them. "I could use help with the ranch accounts. My previous bookkeeper moved to California last month, and I have been trying to manage them myself. But I am a cattleman, not an accountant. I keep getting things mixed up." Margaret made a small sound from where she was working at the stove, but Logan did not look at her. Penelope set down her fork and studied him. "Are you offering me a job, maybe?" "Depends on whether you actually know what you are doing with numbers or if you were just talking big." Logan met her gaze steadily. "I would need to see proof that you can handle it." "Fine." Penelope pushed back her plate. "All business now. Show me your books." 2 hours later, Logan was forced to admit that Penelope Lawson knew exactly what she was doing. She sat at his desk in the study, papers spread around her, making notations and shaking her head at what she clearly considered his incompetence with numbers. Logan stood behind her, looking over her shoulder and trying not to notice how good she smelled despite the dust of travel, like sage and something sweeter he could not quite identify. "You have been underpaying yourself," Penelope said, tapping a column of figures, "and overpaying for feed. I think your supplier in Grand Island has been taking advantage of the fact that you are not checking the invoices carefully. See here. These numbers do not match what you actually received." Logan leaned closer to see what she was pointing at, his arm brushing against her shoulder. Penelope stiffened slightly at the contact, but did not pull away. "How can you tell?" "Because I am looking at your delivery logs and comparing them to the invoices. You have been shorted on at least 3 shipments over the past 2 months. That adds up to about $200. Penelope made another notation. "You need to either find a new supplier or have a very direct conversation with this one." "I will ride to Grand Island tomorrow." Logan was impressed despite himself. "What else?" "Your tax calculations are wrong. You are paying too much to the county. And your payroll for the ranch hands could be organized much better. Right now you are doing it week by week, but if you switch to a monthly system with proper tracking, you would have better oversight of your labor costs." Penelope sat back and looked up at him. "How long did you say you have been trying to manage this yourself?" 3 months. "It shows." But there was no mockery in her voice, just a statement of fact. I could have this organized properly in about 2 weeks. After that, maintaining it would only take a few hours a week. Logan walked around the desk and sat down across from her. So you want the job? Penelope hesitated, chewing on her lower lip in a way that Logan found dangerously distracting. What would the terms be? Room and board plus wages. There is a small cabin on the property that my previous bookkeeper used. It has been empty since he left, but Margaret can have it cleaned up and ready by this evening. As for wages, what were you expecting? What were you paying your previous bookkeeper? $40 a month. Then I want 45. Penelope crossed her arms. Because I am better than he was, and because you are going to try to offer me less because I am a woman. Logan felt a grin tug at his mouth. I was actually going to offer you 50 because you already found problems in my accounts that are going to save me more than that. Penelope blinked. Oh, but I appreciate you negotiating up front. Shows good business sense. Logan extended his hand across the desk. Do we have a deal, Miss Lawson? She looked at his hand for a long moment, then reached out and shook it firmly. Her hand was smaller than his but surprisingly strong, and Logan felt that same jolt of connection he had experienced earlier when she handed him Thunder's reins. From the way Penelope's eyes widened slightly, she felt it too. We have a deal, Mr. Thorne. Her voice was steady, but there was a flush rising in her cheeks. Call me Logan. No point in formality if we are going to be working together. Then you should call me Penelope. She pulled her hand back slowly, as if reluctant to break the contact. When do you want me to start? How about after you have had a chance to get settled in the cabin and clean up? Margaret will help you with whatever you need. Start fresh tomorrow morning. Penelope nodded and stood. Thank you, Logan. I promise you will not regret this. As Logan watched her leave the study with Margaret fussing over her, he had the distinct feeling that his life was about to change in ways he could not quite predict. And surprisingly, that did not worry him nearly as much as it should have. The cabin was small but well built, with a main room that served as both living space and bedroom, a separate area for washing, and a small porch that looked out over the eastern pasture. Margaret had it cleaned and aired out by late afternoon, and had even scrounged up some spare linens and a few pieces of furniture to make it more comfortable. Penelope stood in the doorway and felt something tight in her chest loosen, for the first time in weeks. It is perfect, she told Margaret, who was bustling around making sure everything was just so. Really, thank you. You are welcome, dear. Margaret paused in her fussing and looked at Penelope with kind eyes. I am glad Logan hired you. He has been drowning in those account books, though he is too proud to admit it, and it will be nice to have another woman around the place. Has he been here alone long? Besides you, I mean. His whole life, more or less. Margaret smoothed down the quilt on the bed. Logan came west when he was 24, fresh from some trouble back east that he does not talk about. Built this ranch from nothing through sheer determination and hard work. He is a good man, Penelope. Fair and honest, but he is also alone too much. Spends all his time focused on the ranch and never lets himself think about anything else. Penelope heard what Margaret was not quite saying and felt her face warm. I am just here to work, Margaret, to earn some money and prove something to myself before I go back to St. Louis. Of course you are, dear. But Margaret's smile suggested she knew better. I brought you some things from town, dresses and such. They belonged to my niece, but she moved to Denver and left them behind. I think they will fit you well enough. After Margaret left, Penelope took the opportunity to properly wash for the first time in days. The water was cold but clean, and she scrubbed away the dust and grime of travel until her skin felt raw and new. She put on one of the dresses Margaret had brought, a simple blue calico that was a bit loose in the bodice but otherwise fit well enough. Then she sat on the porch and watched the sun sink lower toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. She thought about what had happened that morning, about the strange cowboy who had caught her on his horse, and then offered her a job instead of calling the sheriff. Logan Thorne was not what she had expected. Penelope had grown used to men who either patronized her or dismissed her outright. But Logan had listened to her, had seen what she could do and valued it. More than that, he had looked at her like she was something worth seeing, like the fire in her eyes was something to be appreciated rather than suppressed. It was dangerous, feeling this way. Penelope had worked too hard and wanted too much to let herself be distracted by a handsome cowboy with blue eyes and a rare smile. She needed to focus on her goals, on proving to her father and to herself that she could make it on her own terms. Getting tangled up in feelings for her employer was the last thing she needed. But when Logan appeared on the path leading to her cabin just as the sun was setting, carrying a basket that she assumed contained dinner, Penelope felt her resolve waver. "Margaret insisted I bring this to you," Logan said, climbing the porch steps. "She says you need at least 3 more good meals before you will be back to proper health." Margaret seems to think everyone is starving, but Penelope accepted the basket gratefully. "Thank you." "Would you like to sit for a moment?" Logan hesitated, then nodded and took a seat on the porch railing. "How are you finding the cabin?" "It is wonderful. Better than any boarding house I stayed in on the journey west." Penelope opened the basket and found bread, cheese, cold chicken, and an apple. "Margaret is very kind. She mothers everyone whether they need it or not." Logan's voice was warm with affection, "but she has a good heart." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Penelope eating and Logan watching the sunset. Finally, Penelope worked up the courage to ask the question that had been bothering her. "Why did you really hire me? You could have sent me on my way this morning." Logan was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, I am not entirely sure. Maybe because you reminded me of myself when I first came here. Angry at the world and determined to prove something. Or maybe because I saw something in you that I recognized. That fire you have, that refusal to back down. I have got that too, or at least I used to. Ranch work has a way of wearing you down, making you forget what you were fighting for in the first place. What were you fighting for? Freedom, I suppose. The chance to build something that was mine and no one else's." Logan looked at her, his expression serious. "I came from money, back in Boston. My father had plans for me, wanted me to take over his shipping business and marry the daughter of one of his associates. A girl I had known since childhood and had absolutely nothing in common with. I tried to be what he wanted for years, but eventually I realized I was suffocating, so I left, took nothing but what I could carry and came west to start over. Does he know where you are? He does now. Took him 3 years to track me down. Sent letters at first, then finally came out here himself. Tried to convince me to come back, said I was throwing my life away on some foolish dream." Logan's jaw tightened at the memory. "I told him I would rather have a life I built myself than one handed to me. We have not spoken since." Penelope felt a surge of understanding. "That is why you understood about my father. I figured we had some things in common." Logan's eyes met hers, and Penelope felt that connection again, that sense that this man understood her in a way few people ever had. "For what it is worth, I think you are right to fight for what you want. Life is too short to live it according to someone else's expectations, even if it means losing your family, even then." But there was sadness in Logan's voice, "though I hope it does not come to that for you." They talked until full dark, sharing stories of their pasts and their hopes for the future. Logan told her about building the ranch, about the hard first winters and the slowly growing success. Penelope told him about working in her father's business, about the satisfaction of closing a good deal and the frustration of never being taken seriously. And slowly, as the stars emerged overhead and the night sounds of the ranch settled around them, Penelope felt something shifting inside her. Something that felt dangerously like hope. When Logan finally stood to leave, he paused at the porch steps and looked back at her. "I am glad you stole my horse this morning, Penelope Lawson." "I borrowed him," Penelope corrected, but she was smiling. "Right, borrowed." Logan's grin was quick and genuine. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we will start teaching you everything you need to know about running a cattle ranch." "I thought I was just keeping your books." "You are, but it helps to understand what the numbers represent. Besides, you handled Thunder like a born rider. Seems a shame to waste that." After he left, Penelope sat on the porch for a while longer, her heart doing strange things in her chest. She was in trouble, she realized. Deep trouble. Because she was already half in love with Logan Thorne, and she had only known him for one day. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that Penelope found deeply satisfying. She spent her mornings working on the ranch accounts, untangling the mess Logan had made and setting up proper systems for tracking expenses and income. The work was challenging but rewarding, and she took pleasure in seeing the numbers come together into coherent patterns. Logan had been right about his supplier in Grand Island, and after a tense confrontation that Logan handled with quiet authority, they either got a refund for the missing feed or found a new supplier who proved far more reliable. In the afternoons, Logan would take Penelope out to see different aspects of the ranch operation. She learned about cattle breeding and the seasonal patterns of moving herds to different pastures. She learned to spot signs of disease in the animals and how to rope a stray calf that had wandered from its mother. Logan was a patient teacher, never talking down to her or acting surprised when she picked things up quickly. And gradually, Penelope came to understand that the ranch was more than just a business to Logan. It was a living thing that he had poured his heart and soul into creating. She also came to understand that she was falling deeper in love with him every day. It was in the small moments that it hit her hardest. The way Logan's face lit up when one of the horses nuzzled his hand. The quiet pride in his voice when he talked about his ranch hands and their families. The rare, beautiful smile that transformed his usually serious expression into something that made Penelope's breath catch. She tried to keep her feelings under control, reminding herself that she was only here temporarily, that she had goals and plans that did not include staying in Nebraska. But her heart was not listening to logic anymore. Logan, for his part, seemed to be fighting his own battle. Penelope caught him watching her sometimes when he thought she was not looking, his expression hungry and conflicted. He was careful to maintain proper distance, never touching her unless absolutely necessary, never crossing the line between employer and employee. But the tension between them grew thicker with each passing day, until Penelope thought she might scream from the frustration of it. Things came to a head on a hot September afternoon when they were checking fence lines in the north pasture. Logan was showing Penelope how to properly mend a broken section of fence when Thunder, who was grazing nearby, suddenly spooked at something. The stallion reared and took off running, heading straight for an area where the fence had partially collapsed. "Thunder!" Logan shouted, but the horse was already gone. Without thinking, Penelope grabbed the reins of her own mount, a gentle mare named Daisy, and took off after the stallion. She could hear Logan shouting behind her, but she was focused on catching Thunder before he hurt himself on the broken fence or got tangled in loose wire. She pushed Daisy harder than she should have, leaning low over the mare's neck as they raced across the uneven ground. Thunder was fast, but Penelope was determined. She managed to get alongside him and reached out, grabbing his trailing reins just as he was about to reach the damaged fence. The sudden jerk pulled her off balance, and for a terrifying moment, Penelope thought she was going to fall. But she managed to hold on, pulling back hard on both sets of reins until both horses slowed and finally stopped. She was breathing hard, her heart pounding in her ears when Logan caught up to her. He swung down from his horse and was at her side in seconds, his hands on her waist helping her down from Daisy. "Are you out of your mind?" His voice was rough with fear and anger. "You could have been killed, but I was not." Penelope's legs were shaking from the adrenaline, and she found herself leaning into Logan's support without meaning to. "And I caught thunder." "I do not give a damn about thunder." Logan's hands tightened on her waist, his face close to hers. "You could have fallen, or Daisy could have stepped in a hole, or any number of things could have gone wrong. Do not ever do something that reckless again. You would have done the same thing. That is different." "Why?" "Because you are a man and I am a woman." Penelope pulled back enough to glare at him, her own temper rising. "I can handle a horse as well as you can, Logan Thorne. You said so yourself." "This is not about your riding ability." Logan's control was clearly fraying. "This is about the fact that I nearly watched you break your neck, and I am not sure I could have survived that." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Penelope stared at Logan, her breath catching at what she saw in his eyes. It was not just anger or fear. It was something much deeper, something that matched the feeling that had been growing in her own chest. "Logan," she whispered. He closed his eyes briefly, his jaw clenched. "We should head back. Logan, look at me." He opened his eyes, and Penelope saw the war happening inside him. She reached up and touched his face, her palm against his cheek, feeling the roughness of his stubble. "What are we doing here?" "I do not know." His voice was raw. "I know what I should be doing. I should be keeping my distance and treating you like the employee you are. But I cannot seem to manage it. Maybe you should stop trying, Penelope." Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. "You are going back to St. Louis eventually. You have got plans and dreams that do not include staying in Nebraska. Getting involved with me would only complicate things." "Maybe I want them complicated." Penelope's heart was racing, but she forced herself to be brave. "Maybe I am tired of doing what I am supposed to do and following plans that were never really mine to begin with." "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I am falling in love with you, Logan Thorne, and I think you might be falling in love with me too." The words came out in a rush, bold and terrifying. "And maybe we should stop fighting it and see where it leads." For a moment, Logan just stared at her. Then, with a sound that was half groan and half surrender, he pulled her close and kissed her. It was like nothing Penelope had ever experienced. Logan kissed like he did everything else, with focus and intensity and a passion that took her breath away. His hands moved from her waist to her back, holding her tight against him, and Penelope wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back with everything she had. All the tension that had been building between them for weeks poured into that kiss, transforming into something fierce and sweet and absolutely right. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Logan rested his forehead against hers. "This is crazy," he murmured. "I know." "You are going to ruin me, Penelope Lawson." "Good." She smiled and kissed him again, softer this time. "Because you already ruined me." They stood there in the middle of the pasture, holding each other as the sun beat down and the horses grazed peacefully nearby. And for the first time since leaving St. Louis, Penelope felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The next few weeks were both the happiest and most terrifying of Penelope's life. She and Logan tried to be discreet, aware that the ranch hands would gossip, and that there would be talk in town if word got out that the boss was involved with his bookkeeper. But it was hard to hide the way they looked at each other, the way Logan's hand would linger on her shoulder when he helped her down from her horse, the way Penelope's face would light up whenever he walked into a room. Margaret, of course, figured it out immediately. "About time," she said one morning when she caught Logan and Penelope sharing a quick kiss in the kitchen before the ranch hands arrived for breakfast. "I was wondering how long you two were going to dance around each other." Logan had the grace to look embarrassed. "Margaret." "Do not Margaret me, I have got eyes and I am not blind." But Margaret was smiling. "You are good for each other, anyone can see that. Just be smart about it, and for heaven's sake, do not give the men too much to gossip about." Being smart about it was easier said than done. Logan and Penelope spent every moment they could together, stealing time in the early mornings before anyone else was up or late in the evenings after the day's work was done. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, sharing their fears and hopes and dreams. Logan told her about the loneliness of building the ranch, about the nights when he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake leaving Boston. Penelope told him about the frustration of being constantly underestimated, about the dream of one day owning her own business where she would make the rules. And slowly, inevitably, they fell deeper in love. The first major test came in mid-October when a letter arrived from Penelope's father. She sat at her desk in the cabin, staring at the envelope with a mixture of dread and curiosity. It was the first correspondence she had received from him since leaving St. Louis 3 months ago. Logan found her there an hour later, the letter still unopened in her hands. He sat down next to her on the bed and took her hand. "Want to tell me about it? It is from my father." Penelope's voice was tight. "I am afraid to open it." "Why?" "Because I think I know what it is going to say, that my time for wandering is up, that I need to come home and accept my place in his world, and I do not know if I am strong enough to say no." Logan squeezed her hand. "You are the strongest person I know, Penelope, and whatever that letter says, we will deal with it together." Penelope took a deep breath and opened the envelope. The letter was short and to the point, written in her father's precise handwriting. He had heard from someone in Grand Island that she was working as a bookkeeper on a ranch. He was deeply disappointed that she had taken employment so far beneath her station. He gave her until the end of November to return home, and if she did not, he would come to North Platte himself to retrieve her. "He cannot do that," Penelope said, anger and fear warring in her voice. "I am 22 years old. He cannot force me to do anything. No, he cannot." Logan read the letter over her shoulder, his expression darkening. "But he can make your life difficult. Does he control your inheritance?" "Not all of it. My mother left me some money in a trust that I will be able to access when I am 25. But yes, most of my financial security is tied up in my father's business and his goodwill." Penelope crumpled the letter in her fist. "I hate that he still has this power over me." "Then take the power back." Logan turned her to face him. "Stay here, not as my employee but as my partner. Help me build this ranch into something even bigger. We could expand the operation, maybe start breeding horses in addition to cattle. Your business sense combined with my knowledge of ranching, we could do amazing things." Penelope's heart soared at the suggestion, but doubt quickly followed. "Logan, you are talking about a business partnership, but what about us? What about this?" She gestured between them. "I am talking about everything, Penelope. Business and personal. I love you. I know it is fast and probably crazy, but I love you and I want you to stay. Not just for a few months, but permanently, as my partner in every way that matters. Are you asking me to marry you?" "Yes." Logan's voice was steady, his eyes locked on hers. I am asking you to marry me and build a life here with me. I know it is not what you planned. I know you wanted to go back east and confront your father and prove yourself, but maybe you can prove yourself here instead, on your own terms in your own way, with me beside you." Penelope felt tears prick her eyes. "My father will cut me off. He will disown me completely if I do this. I know. And I would not blame you if you chose to go back. Your relationship with your father is your business, and I will not ask you to sacrifice it lightly." Logan cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle. "But I need you to know that if you do stay, you will not be alone. You will have me and this ranch and a life we build together. It will not be easy, and there will be hard times. But I promise you, Penelope, I will spend every day making sure you never regret choosing me." Penelope closed her eyes, letting herself feel the weight of the decision. She thought about her father and the business she had worked so hard to be part of. She thought about St. Louis and the life she had always imagined for herself. And then she thought about Logan and the ranch and the way she felt when she was here, like she was finally becoming the person she was always meant to be. When she opened her eyes, she knew what her answer would be. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I will marry you." Logan's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. He kissed her deeply, pulling her close, and Penelope felt everything inside her settle into place. This was right. This was where she belonged. They married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the small church in North Platte. Margaret stood as Penelope's witness, and Logan's foreman, a gruff man named Henry Carter who had been with the ranch since the beginning, stood as his. The whole event took less than an hour, but to Penelope, it felt like the most important hour of her life. She wore a cream-colored dress that Margaret had helped her alter, with lace at the collar and cuffs. Logan wore his best suit, his dark hair neatly combed for once, his blue eyes bright with happiness. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife and Logan kissed her in front of the handful of people who had gathered to witness the ceremony, Penelope felt tears slip down her cheeks. "Happy tears," Logan murmured against her lips. "The happiest." She kissed him again, not caring who was watching. "I love you, Logan Thorne." "I love you too, Penelope Thorne." Hearing her new name sent a thrill through Penelope. She was no longer Penelope Lawson, daughter of a St. Louis textile merchant. She was Penelope Thorne, wife of a Nebraska rancher and partner in building a new kind of life. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, with Margaret organizing food and drink for everyone. The ranch hands toasted the new couple and speculated cheerfully about how long it would be before there were little thorns running around. Penelope blushed at the teasing, but Logan just laughed and kept his arm firmly around her waist. As the sun set and the party wound down, Logan led Penelope away from the crowd and back to the house. Over the past week, he had moved her belongings from the cabin into the main house, transforming his spare and practical bedroom into something more suited for 2 people. There were curtains on the windows now, and a proper quilt on the bed, and a vase of late-season wildflowers on the dresser. "Welcome home, Mrs. Thorne," Logan said as he closed the bedroom door behind them. Penelope looked around the room, then at her new husband, and felt a wave of emotion so strong it almost knocked her over. "I am home," she agreed. "Finally." That night, as Logan made love to her with patience and tenderness and a passion that left them both breathless, Penelope let go of the last remnants of her old life and embraced the new one fully. She had chosen this. She had chosen him. And she had never been more certain of anything. The letter to her father was the hardest thing Penelope had ever written. She sat at Logan's desk, the paper in front of her blank for a long time before she finally found the words. She told him about Logan and the ranch and the work she was doing. She explained her decision to stay in Nebraska and build a life here. And she told him that while she loved him and hoped they could eventually reconcile, she could no longer live according to his expectations. "I need to make my own way," she wrote. "I need to prove to myself that I can build something meaningful on my own terms. I hope you can understand, and I hope that one day you can forgive me. But whether you do or not, this is my decision and I am at peace with it. I love you, Father, but I love myself more. And I finally love someone who loves me exactly as I am." She sent the letter knowing that there might never be a response, and while that hurt, Penelope found that she could live with it. She had Logan and the ranch and a future that was hers to shape. Her father did respond 3 weeks later. The letter was short and cold, informing her that he was disappointed in her choices and that she should not expect any financial support from him going forward. He had removed her from his will and considered their relationship at an end. He wished her well in her new life and asked that she not contact him again. Penelope cried when she read it, grieving for the relationship she had hoped they might one day have. Logan held her through the tears, not saying anything, just being there as solid and steady support. And eventually, the tears stopped and Penelope felt something like relief. The choice had been made. The bridge had been burned. Now all that was left was to move forward, and move forward they did. The winter of 1882 was hard, with heavy snows and bitter cold that tested the ranch's resources and the couple's determination. But they got through it together, Logan teaching Penelope everything about managing a ranch through harsh weather, and Penelope using her business skills to make sure they stayed financially stable. By the time spring arrived, they had not only survived but had actually turned a small profit. In April, Penelope discovered she was pregnant. She told Logan one evening after dinner, unsure how he would react. They had talked about children in abstract terms but had not made any specific plans. Logan's face went through a series of emotions so quickly that Penelope almost laughed. Shock, followed by joy, followed by fear, and then settling into a kind of awed happiness. "Are you certain as I can be without seeing a doctor? But yes, Logan, we are going to have a baby." He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing like children. "This is incredible, amazing, terrifying, all of the above," Penelope agreed. "Are you happy?" Happy does not even begin to cover it. Logan set her down carefully, his hands moving to rest gently on her still flat stomach. "We are going to be parents." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through spring and summer. Penelope continued working on the ranch accounts, though Logan increasingly insisted she take things easy. Margaret fussed over her constantly, making sure she ate enough and got enough rest. The ranch hands treated her with a careful gentleness that would have been amusing if it was not so touching. As her belly grew, Penelope found herself thinking often about the future. About the child who would grow up here on this ranch, learning to ride horses and work cattle and see the value in hard work and determination. About the life she and Logan were building together, brick by brick and day by day. She thought about her father too, wondering if he ever thought about her, if he regretted his harsh words. She hoped that one day he might soften enough to want to meet his grandchild, but she was not counting on it. In November, just as the first snows were beginning to fall, Penelope went into labor. Margaret sent one of the ranch hands racing to town for the doctor while she and Logan helped Penelope into bed. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next afternoon. Logan stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and murmuring encouragement even as she cursed him for getting her into this situation. Finally, in the early evening of November 12, 1883, their son was born. He came into the world screaming lustily, his face red and furious at being evicted from his comfortable home. Logan cradled the tiny baby with shaking hands while the doctor tended to Penelope, tears streaming down his face unashamedly. "He is perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect." Penelope, exhausted but elated, reached for her son. The baby settled immediately when she held him, his cries quieting as he nuzzled against her. What should we name him? They had discussed names but had not made a final decision. Logan looked down at his son, then at his wife, and smiled. "What about Samuel? After my grandfather, the only member of my family who ever really understood me." "Samuel Thorne." Penelope tested the name and found it fit perfectly. "I love it." Samuel proved to be an easy baby, content and curious about the world around him. He had Logan's blue eyes and Penelope's dark hair, and a smile that could light up a room. Watching Logan with their son made Penelope fall in love with him all over again. He was a devoted father, patient and playful and completely besotted with the tiny human they had created together. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Word spread about Penelope's skill with accounts and business management, and other ranchers in the area began to seek her advice. She started taking on consulting work, helping neighbors improve their operations and charging fair fees for her expertise. The extra income allowed them to expand their own operation, buying more land and increasing their herds. By the time Samuel was 2, the Thorne Ranch was one of the most successful operations in the county. Logan and Penelope worked as equal partners in every sense, making decisions together and supporting each other through challenges. They added horses to their cattle operation, breeding and training animals that gained a reputation for quality throughout Nebraska and beyond. Thunder, now getting older but still spirited, sired several excellent foals that sold for good money. In the spring of 1886, Penelope gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Grace. She was smaller than Samuel had been but just as healthy, with her mother's green eyes and her father's stubborn chin. Samuel, now 2.5, was initially suspicious of this new person who took up so much of his parents' attention, but he quickly became devoted to his baby sister. Life settled into a rhythm of work and family, seasons passing with the reliable cycle of ranching life. Penelope never heard from her father again, though she sent him letters each year at Christmas, updating him on her life and including photographs of his grandchildren. The letters went unanswered, but she kept sending them anyway, hoping that someday he might soften. The answer came in an unexpected way in 1889. Penelope was in the study working on the quarterly accounts when Logan came in with a telegram in his hand. His expression was serious and Penelope felt her stomach drop. "What is it?" "It is about your father." Logan sat down next to her and took her hand. "Penelope, he has died. A stroke, according to his lawyer. This telegram is from someone named Jonathan Porter. He says he is the executor of your father's estate and needs to speak with you about important matters." Penelope stared at the telegram, feeling numb. Her father was dead. The man who had raised her and taught her about business, who had also hurt her so deeply with his rejection, was gone. And she had never had the chance to reconcile with him. "I need to go to St. Louis," she said finally. "I need to settle whatever needs to be settled." "We will all go," Logan said firmly. "You should not do this alone." The journey to St. Louis took 3 days by train. 5-year-old Samuel entranced by the speed and motion, while 3-year-old Grace clung to Penelope nervously. Logan kept them all organized and calm, handling the logistics of travel with 4 people, including 2 small children, with practiced efficiency. The city felt both familiar and strange to Penelope as their carriage made its way through streets she had once known so well. Everything looked smaller somehow, less impressive than she remembered. Or maybe she was the one who had changed, shaped by 7 years of ranch life and the challenges she had overcome. Her father's lawyer, Jonathan Porter, met them at a hotel and explained the situation. Despite his harsh letter years ago, Penelope's father had never actually changed his will. She was still his sole heir, inheriting both the textile business and his considerable personal fortune. There was also a letter, written shortly before his death, that Porter handed to Penelope with gentle hands. She waited until they were back in their hotel room, the children napping and Logan sitting quietly beside her, before she opened it. Her father's handwriting was shakier than she remembered, evidence of the illness that had taken him. "My dear Penelope," the letter began. "I am writing this knowing I do not have much time left, and knowing that I owe you an apology I may never have the chance to deliver in person. I was wrong. Wrong to dismiss your abilities, wrong to try to force you into a mold you were never meant to fit, and most wrong of all to turn my back on you when you chose your own path. I have followed your life from a distance these past years through reports from business associates in Nebraska. I know about your ranch and your consulting work and your growing reputation as one of the sharpest business minds in the territory. I know about your husband and your children, and I want you to know that I am proud of you, even though I never had the courage to say so while I was alive. You were right to choose your own way. You have built something remarkable, something I could never have given you. I only wish I had been brave enough to support you in that choice instead of pushing you away. The business is yours now, to do with as you see fit. You can run it yourself or sell it, or anything in between. I trust your judgment, Penelope. I should have trusted it years ago. I hope you can forgive a stubborn old man who loved you more than he knew how to show. Your mother would have been so proud of the woman you have become. I am proud too, even if I never said the words. All my love, Father." Penelope read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Logan held her as she cried, grieving for the father she had lost and for the relationship they might have had if he had found his courage sooner. But there was also relief in those tears, a sense of closure she had not realized she needed. They stayed in St. Louis for 2 weeks while Penelope sorted through her father's affairs. The textile business was indeed thriving, well managed by the people her father had hired. After careful consideration and discussions with Logan, Penelope decided to keep the business but hire a management team to run it day to day. She would maintain oversight and make major decisions, but would not relocate to St. Louis. Her life was in Nebraska now, with Logan and their children, and the ranch they had built together. The arrangement worked beautifully. The income from the textile business allowed them to expand the ranch even further and to provide financial backing for other ventures. Penelope used some of the money to set up loans for women entrepreneurs in Nebraska, helping other women who were trying to build businesses in a world that often dismissed them. It was satisfying work that honored both her father's legacy and her own values. Years passed, full and rich with life. Samuel grew into a serious boy who loved the ranch and showed a natural talent for working with horses. Grace proved to be a wild child, fearless and adventurous, constantly giving her parents heart attacks with her daring exploits. In 1892, Penelope gave birth to their 3rd child, another son they named Daniel. He was quiet and thoughtful, more interested in books than cattle, and Penelope and Logan made sure he knew that was perfectly fine. The ranch continued to prosper, growing into one of the largest operations in Nebraska. Logan and Penelope's partnership, both personal and professional, became something of a legend in the territory. People marveled at how they worked together, each complementing the other's strengths, each respecting the other's expertise. Young couples sometimes came to them for advice, wanting to know how to build that kind of equal partnership. "It is simple," Logan would tell them. "You find someone whose fire matches your own, someone who makes you better instead of trying to make you smaller, and then you hold on tight and never let go." In 1895, Nebraska became increasingly connected to the rest of the country through expanding railroad lines and telegraph networks. The world was changing rapidly, moving toward a new century. But on the Thorne Ranch, some things remained constant. The rhythm of the seasons, the satisfaction of hard work well done, and the love between a cowboy and the woman he had found riding his horse at dawn. On a cool October morning, Penelope woke early and slipped out of bed without waking Logan. She pulled on a dressing gown and walked out onto the porch of their expanded ranch house, looking out over land they had worked so hard to build into something meaningful. The eastern pasture was just visible in the pre-dawn light, and Penelope smiled, remembering another October morning 13 years ago when Logan had caught her there. "Could not sleep." Logan's voice came from behind her, and she felt his arms wrap around her waist. "Just thinking," Penelope leaned back against him. "Do you remember the morning we met? Every detail." Logan's breath was warm against her ear. "I saw you on Thunder and thought you were either the bravest or the craziest woman I had ever met. Turns out I was both. Turns out you were perfect." Logan turned her in his arms so they were facing each other. At 43, he had silver threading through his dark hair and lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun. But to Penelope, he was just as handsome as the day they met. "You were exactly what I needed, even though I did not know I needed you. The feeling is mutual, cowboy." Penelope reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the familiar lines and planes. "Think about everything that had to happen for us to find each other. All the choices and chances and coincidences. I prefer to think we were always going to find each other somehow." Logan pulled her closer. "The universe just needed to make sure we were both ready." As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, they stood together on the porch and watched their ranch wake up. Somewhere in the house, they could hear the children beginning to stir. Samuel would be up soon to help with the morning chores. Grace would demand pancakes for breakfast, and Daniel would appear with his nose in a book as usual. It was a good life. Not the one Penelope had planned when she left St. Louis all those years ago, but so much better than anything she could have imagined. She had found love and partnership and purpose here in the wide, open spaces of Nebraska. She had found herself. And it had all started with a stolen ride on a cowboy's horse at dawn, and the fire in his eyes that had matched her own. The story of Logan and Penelope Thorne became part of local legend in North Platte. People told it to their children and grandchildren. A tale about two stubborn people who found each other and built something lasting. The ranch they created together continued to thrive through the turn of the century and beyond. A testament to what could be accomplished when two people worked as true partners. In 1912, when Logan and Penelope celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party that brought together people from all over Nebraska. Samuel, now 29 and running a significant portion of the ranch operations, made a toast to his parents that brought tears to many eyes. "My father caught my mother stealing his horse," Samuel said, grinning. "And instead of calling the sheriff, he gave her a job." That kind of sums up their entire relationship. They have always seen the potential in each other, always believed in what the other could become. They have built not just a ranch, but a legacy of partnership and respect and love that has shaped all of our lives. To Logan and Penelope Thorne, the best parents and the best partners anyone could ask for. As everyone raised their glasses and cheered, Logan pulled Penelope close and kissed her soundly, not caring that all their friends and family were watching. She kissed him back with all the love and passion that had sustained them through 3 decades of life together. "Still got that fire in your eyes," Logan murmured against her lips. "So do you, cowboy." Penelope smiled up at him. "So do you." The years continued to pass, bringing both joy and sorrow as years always do. Grace married a railroad engineer and moved to Denver, though she visited often with her growing family. Daniel surprised everyone by becoming a lawyer, using his sharp mind to help homesteaders and small ranchers protect their rights. Samuel stayed on the ranch, eventually taking over management when Logan and Penelope finally decided to step back from day-to-day operations. In 1920, Logan fell ill with pneumonia during a particularly harsh winter. For days, Penelope barely left his bedside, holding his hand and talking to him about all the memories they had made together. He rallied eventually, but the illness left him weaker than before. He could no longer ride out to check fences or rope cattle, and Penelope could see how much that frustrated him. "I hate getting old," he grumbled one afternoon as they sat on the porch together, wrapped in blankets against the cold. "At least we are getting old together," Penelope pointed out. At 59, she had her own aches and pains, her dark hair now completely silver. But her mind was as sharp as ever, and she still managed the business side of the ranch with skill. "Remember when we used to think 40 was ancient? We were fools." But Logan was smiling. "I would not trade a single year, Penelope. Not one day, even the hard ones. Neither would I." They had their golden years together, watching their grandchildren grow and playing a smaller but still important role in the ranch operations. Penelope kept working with the textile business and her women's loan program, finding satisfaction in continuing to make a difference. Logan spent his time training young horses and passing on his knowledge to the next generation of ranchers. On a warm June morning in 1925, Logan died peacefully in his sleep, Penelope beside him as she had been for 42 years. She held his hand and felt the moment his spirit left, and though grief threatened to overwhelm her, there was also a deep sense of gratitude. They had been given so much time together, had built so much, had loved so deeply. Not everyone got that gift. Samuel found her still sitting beside the bed an hour later, tears streaming down her face but a small smile on her lips. "Mama," he asked gently. "He had a good life," Penelope said softly. "We had a good life together, the best life." She looked at her son, seeing both Logan and herself reflected in his face. "Make sure everyone knows that. Your father lived exactly the way he wanted to live, building something that mattered and loving people who loved him back. That is all any of us can hope for." The funeral brought people from across Nebraska and beyond. Logan Thorne had been respected not just as a successful rancher, but as a fair employer and good neighbor. But it was Penelope's eulogy that people remembered, her voice strong despite her grief, as she told the story of how they met. "Logan gave me a chance when he had every right to call the sheriff," she said. "He saw past the scandal of a woman stealing a horse and recognized someone who just needed an opportunity. That was who he was, a man who saw the best in people and helped them become it. He made me better. He made all of us better, and the greatest honor of my life was being his partner and his wife." Penelope lived another 8 years after Logan's death. She stayed active in the ranch and her various business interests, though she let Samuel handle more of the day-to-day decisions. She spent time with her grandchildren, 14 in all, and got to meet 3 great-grandchildren before she passed. She never remarried, telling anyone who asked that she had already had the great love of her life and did not need another. On a spring morning in 1933, Penelope woke feeling unusually tired. She was 72 now, and her body was finally starting to fail after so many years of active life. She got up slowly and dressed, then walked out to the stables where Thunder's great-grandson, another powerful stallion named Lightning, was stabled. Samuel found her there an hour later, sitting on a bale of hay and watching Lightning with a peaceful expression. At first he thought she was just resting, but when he got closer, he realized she was gone. "I think she wanted to be near the horses," Samuel told his sisters and his own children that evening as they gathered to mourn. "She told me once that everything good in her life started with a stolen ride on a horse. I think she wanted to remember that one more time." Penelope was buried next to Logan on a hill overlooking the eastern pasture where she had first ridden Thunder all those years ago. Their shared headstone was simple but meaningful. Logan and Penelope Thorne, partners in life and love. They found each other at dawn and never let go. The Thorne Ranch continued through the generations, a lasting monument to what two people with determination and love could build together. And sometimes, on cool autumn mornings when the light was just right, ranch hands swore they could see two figures on horseback riding across the eastern pasture, racing the sunrise just like they did in the beginning. It was a fitting end to a story that had started with fire and determination and a stolen horse at dawn. Logan and Penelope Thorne had lived fully and loved deeply, building a legacy that would last long after they were gone. They had faced every challenge as partners, every triumph as a team, every day as an opportunity to love each other a little more. And in the end, that was exactly what they had done.